Hey, good day. This is Helium 360, and we are a group of people who have come together to try to simplify and also amplify some of the great things that are going on in the research community that are not available to the public at large. So we meet and then we discuss some topics that are really important to the community, and we try to simplify some of the new research findings coming out. And then we have experts that also come and try to help us understand what is going on in the research communities. So today we have a topic which is communicable diseases, and I will be the host for today. We have three. I will be the main host, and then my co-host is going to be Mr. Jonathan Sarkodie. We have three distinguished individuals who are going to lead us in today's topic. The first person is Enoch Mensah Boateng, who is an applied zoologist and a parasitologist. That's a big word. In the Czech University of Life Sciences in Prague. The next person is Rhoda Ananikakari. She is a PhD candidate at the Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich at the Faculty of Medicine. And the next person is Anita Asamoah, who is a public health associate and researcher. And they are going to help us to understand a little bit about diabetes and its prevention and everything. So you will now start with Enoch to give us a little introduction to the topic.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much for the introduction, and once again the opportunity to meet and discuss something that will benefit the health of our society. Last week we started with lifestyle diseases, and we had an overview of that, in which we mentioned a number of diseases, which are also known as communicable diseases, which are affecting population globally. And when we concluded last week, we made mention of the fact that we'll meet again and take these diseases one after the other. And today I want to start with a quick introduction to diabetes. And when we talk about diabetes, there are two types. Today we're going to focus more on type 2 diabetes. We will look at the definition of what diabetes is, the global disease burden. We will look at effects of diabetes on people with diabetes. We will look at some of the risk factors, causes, and finally, we will look at signs and symptoms of the disease. The ultimate goal is to make people aware of how rampant this disease is, and some of the measures they need to take, or what they need to look out for in order to be aware whether they are suffering from the disease or not. And subsequent session would look at the diagnosis of the disease, prevention, and other stuff. I will talk briefly on that in the last part of my presentation. All right, so what is diabetes? Usually from the layman's point of view, diabetes is described as an increase in sugar in the person's body. And scientifically, it is known to have something to do with the increase in blood glucose, which is also called blood sugar. When your blood sugar becomes higher than the normal. And since we are not going to dive into the diagnosis, I'm not going to tell you when your blood glucose is higher or lower. But in simple terms, there are three reasons why a person's blood glucose can be higher than normal. The first one is when your pancreas is not producing enough insulin for the body to be able to metabolize the glucose in your blood. And then second is when it is not producing at all. And the last is the pancreas might produce the necessary insulin, but your body is not able to use it effectively. So if you can see from this here, this is normal, right? Blood system here at the level of glucose, and here you see that a lot of glucose. And then when you come to this second picture, you can see glucose is depicted by the yellow, and then you can see the blood cells in the red. In the first one, normal blood glucose, you see minimum level or minimum number of yellow dots, but when you go to the second one, you see more than you see in the first one. So that is to illustrate that there is higher level of glucose in the blood. Some statistics to guide our way. Sometimes it's important to know the rate at which the disease is affecting people in order to plan whether it is necessary to put some intervention regarding control and stuff. And so all over the world, over 500 million people are affected by diabetes as of 2021. And with this, 6%, they represent 6% of the total world population. However, the age bracket for the disease is between 20 years to 79 years. And when you take the population, the global population of people in this age bracket, it amounts to 10.5% of the world's population being affected, the world's population between 20 to 79 years being affected by diabetes. And what is even threatening is that in 30 years, it is estimated that the prevalence of the disease will more than double to 1.3 billion. Of all the global disease, as of 2016, 60% of diabetes patients were in Asia, with India and China accounting for half of that prevalence in Asia. In the US alone, over 38 million people are living with diabetes, which amount to 11.6%. And in Africa, 24 million as of 2021 are living with diabetes. Regarding death, if you take 1,000 people in 1990, if you take 1,000 people who were dying, 61 of them were dying as a result of diabetes. However, this has increased in a space of 29 years from 61 people dying out of 1,000 people who were dying from all causes. 61 were dying because of diabetes. However, 29 years on, 150 people out of 1,000 people who are dying as a result of diabetes. So we should take note of how rapid the growth rate of death, diabetes death is going. And then you can see from the screen that annually there's an increase of 4.9%. Almost 5 people out of 100 are dying, or are in addition to the people who are dying out of diabetes year by year. All right, let's look at, before I move to that. So here also we have the statistics based on the economic status of countries. We have the low income countries, low middle income countries, upper middle income countries, and then high income countries. And from the graph here, you can see that the disease is quite prevalent in the less economically endowed countries compared to countries with the higher economics. And probably if we dive into the causes, we might know why this disparity exists. Briefly, some of the general effects of diabetes is the damage to the eye, and you can see a normal eye and a diabetic eye with some nerves that are not abnormal blood vessels. There are also cotton wool spots, and these go a long way to affect the functioning of the eye. Also, it affects the nerves or damages the nerve. You can see a normal nerve here and an abnormal nerve as a result of diabetes here. This is the nerves where there's blood circulation, and here when there's no blood circulation, this is how the nerves look like, the third one. And then it also affects the heart, and it will shock you to know that over 70% of people with diabetes, or 70% of people who are dying out of diabetes, are dying because of diabetes-induced heart problems. Also, diabetes affects the kidney. And as you can see, we have a normal kidney versus an abnormal kidney. And what is clear here is you can see the size of both kidneys are not the same. The abnormal kidney emanating from diabetes is small and it have rough surface, and because of the decrease in size, the function is also decreased, and also cause the retention of high protein in urine. Risk factors, and when I talk about risk factors, I want us to understand it from the point that risk factor is not the same as the cause. However, there can be an intersection for the two. A risk factor can double as a cause. Risk factors are the things that predispose people to diabetes. And sometimes you might have these risk factors, but if you don't compound it with the cause, or if you don't indulge in the causes, then it might not have any effect on you. The first on the list is obesity or overweight. overweight people are prone to being affected by diabetes than people with normal weight. That is not to say that people with normal weight cannot be affected by diabetes. And then the disease is noted to be prevalent or dominant in people age 35 plus. Also, ethnicity background. Studies in America has demonstrated that people with Black origin, Latino origin, Hispanic, and then Asian origin have higher chance of having diabetes than maybe the Caucasians. Also, if you experience diabetes during pregnancy, there is a high tendency of this developing into type 2 diabetes in the future. One of the ways by which you may know that you also suffer from gestational diabetes is when you give birth to a kind of overweight or baby over 9 pounds. It's a symptom of you having gestational diabetes. And there's something we call pre-diabetes. That is a junction between the normal blood sugar level or blood glucose level and then diabetes. So if sometimes your blood glucose level is more than the normal, but it has not gotten into the state where we can say that you are diabetic, then you should look out for, because it makes you susceptible to diabetes. And then a sedentary lifestyle. You can see this man here, and there are ripple effects of sedentary lifestyle. And then finally, I want to talk about the family history. Usually, people are tempted to think that when we say family history, it's more or less about genetics, disposition, predisposition, or whatsoever. But that is not actually it all. Family history might involve lifestyle, the kind of diet the family share, the physical inactivity, behaviors such as smoking and alcoholism, alongside the genetic aspect. So all these factors together are captured under family history. So we should take note about this. And a family which kind of are not active, which are eating junk food and stuff, can pass the culture on to successive generations. And it makes people coming from that genealogy prone to being affected by diabetes. And now the causes. Number one is diet. And even though I have demonstrated in this image some kind of chips, fizzy drinks, and some junks, sweets, and stuff, overall, any diet that is very high in carbohydrates, one has the tendency of causing diabetes in a person which is susceptible to diabetes, or people who have higher risk factors. And overeating as well. You may have the right the food that is not junk or high quality food, but consuming more calories than your body needs can result in you developing diabetes. So when we talk about diet, it's not only about the quality, but also the quantity, how much one consumes. And as I said in previous meeting, there are people who are very conscious of this, and they have a kind of scale to measure the amount of carbs they consume in a day. Since we're not talking about preventions and stuff, I don't want to go deep, but it's good to know that you are not overeating, and subsequent presentations will expose us to how to ensure that we are not eating more carbs than we are expected to eat. Excessive alcohol intake, when alcohol breaks down in the body, it produces energy, it produces glucose, or we would say sugar. And so the more you consume alcohol, the higher the level of the sugar you're going to have in your system. And if your body is not producing enough insulin to convert this glucose emanating from alcohol, then you're going to be affected by diabetes. Smoking might affect the proper functioning of the pancreas and the release of insulin, or even the absorption of insulin and being used by the cells of the body. And vitamin D deficiency is one big issue when it comes to diabetes, especially in the Black communities who are not living within place where a lot of sunshine are available. When I came here, I learned a lot about how vitamin D deficiency can cause diabetes, because I have been affected before, and I'm still working on getting better. Because here, the amount of sunlight we get is quite less than what I would probably get in Ghana or in Africa. There was the need to supplement the inadequate sunlight I get from here with vitamin D supplements. I didn't know this until I went to hospital and a whole lot of things. So it's very important information to note that the level of our vitamin D or vitamin D deficiency in a person's body can cause diabetes. And finally, genetic factors. Um, some genes might be passed on from parents to progeny, and this might affect how the person's body reacts to insulin or produce insulin. And so there might be other factors that can contribute or that can cause type 2 diabetes, but for now, I want to just dwell on this 5 year and make us aware that if we indulge in any of this, we should know that they have the higher probability of leading to diabetes. Finally, for today's presentation, I want to touch on a few signs and symptoms of diabetes. I read one article which showed that there are almost 600 million people living with diabetes. And of these 600 people, 50% do not even know that they have diabetes. And when I went to hospital and I was told that my blood sugar was high, I had a conversation with a friend who is also from Ghana, but he's living here. When we were talking, he told me, but then if you had it, you will notice that something happening, like some tingling sensation, something that feels cold, frequent urination at night and stuff. I had experienced all these. Signs and symptoms. But I didn't know. And when it comes to the feeling I had in the tips of my fingers, I feel like I have had it over years, and I never knew that it was even something abnormal that I should look out for or talk to my doctor about it. And so, if I had died from diabetes, I might have died out of ignorance. So it is very important. You cannot see. Um, like without knowing the signs that I have diabetes or not. So here are some things to look out for. And that is what made me contact Anita to be here, because I also saw that she's into this advocacy and she uses her platform to mention some of this. So when I was preparing for this presentation and I saw that she posted something, I just contacted her that I would like her to be here. She might have even much experience and information about this aspect than me. So yeah, sorry about the vitamin D deficiency here. It wasn't meant to be here. So one of the signs to look out for is that you might not be physically engaged, but you come out very tired often, and that should be a sign or a warning to someone about the possibility of having diabetes or having elevated blood sugar. And then when you are not intentional about losing weight, but you all of a sudden start losing weight that you can't explain. Also, blurred vision. We mentioned earlier on that the diabetes damages the eye, and as a result, it affects your vision. It's difficult to have proper vision, clear vision when one has diabetes. And also, due to the damage to the kidney and the shrink size of the kidney, you start to urinate frequently than normal, even when you have not taken in too much water. So that is something to look out for. And then two things which go hand in hand: excessive hunger. There are times you will feel the urge that you are too hungry and you want something to eat, or you are too thirsty. That cannot be explained. These are signs to look out for or symptoms to look out for in people that are prone to having diabetes. So what next? I think our subsequent episode, we will look at the specific effect of diabetes on men and women. There are so much studies, research on these areas that needs to be discussed, and the diagnosis of the disease. And probably what is most important is prevention and management practices and maybe treatment. I know there are people who do not want to take some of these chemotherapies, like drugs for these lifestyle diseases, because of the perceived side effects and so on. But maybe research findings will help us to appreciate why sometimes it is necessary to take this treatment. So I would encourage our listeners and viewers to subscribe and then wait in anticipation of knowing more about type 2 diabetes. On this note, I would want to thank the host for the time, and I'm done with my presentation. I would also want to invite our listeners to subscribe and follow us on any of these platforms. We are new, and we will be motivated to do more for people if we see that our work is reaching the people we intend to reach. So scan the codes, and if you are interested in, if you are a Facebook user, just scan the code for Facebook. If you're a YouTube user, you can scan the code for the QR code for YouTube, and then follow us for update and for subsequent presentations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Enoch, for the presentation. So we will leave it to our two resident experts if they have anything they want to add to what Enoch just said. Rhoda, I think you have to unmute. We can't hear you.
Actually, I wasn't talking, but anyways.
Oh, sorry, I saw your mouth move.
I was looking at the slides where you talked about, is it possible to go back to slides or
Yes, I can go back.
where you talked about the effect of diabetes? Yeah, here. So here I wanted to stress that the effects of the diabetes, because we are educating, so I want people to also know that all this effects, people usually want to see this effect before they think they have diabetes, but these are usually diabetes complications. So they are the end stage of diabetes. And most of these effects we see on the screen are irreversible, especially when you have a diabetic eye, which is the retinopathy. You cannot reverse this condition. It is end stage for you. And also the kidney disease, where you have to be on dialysis. Even with exercise and also with diet, you cannot reverse these conditions. You can only manage them, or yeah, we can only manage this. And also the diabetic foot. I think now it's very common to see people who have been amputated because of this disease. And of course, when we amputate your leg, you cannot. So I think I wanted to stress for our listeners to know that, as you said, early treatment and early detection is the key way for us to combat diabetes. And as I'm talking about early treatment, I also want to talk about insulin resistance, as you already said. So before we have more sugar in our blood, the patients become insulin resistant. Here, I mean that the body is not able to use the insulin hormone, or it is unable to produce more of these insulin hormones. And that is why I always advise people that when you go to the clinic and they test your glucose level, instead of doing the rapid test where we prick your hand and check for the level, your glucose status with that, you would rather want to do a more detailed treatment, like maybe have an oral glucose tolerance test or check your blood for these early signs and symptoms. And I think just to encourage someone. So for my dad, he was pre-diabetic since he was 45 years. And now he's 69 years and he's still pre-diabetic. He's still not diabetic yet because he was able to detect it early that he was insulin resistant. So he started his lifestyle modification. He started working towards not getting to this stage of the disease. So when you do a test on him, you might think, oh, you are fine, you don't have diabetes. But clearly he has all the signs of diabetes, except that he is not showing the global or the unified testing range for the disease. And this is because he is controlling with his lifestyle modification. So that is also something I wanted to hint. So I'll leave for other people to talk, and maybe we can discuss more as we go on. Yeah, thank you.
Just to add quickly to what you just said regarding the testing, I didn't go into that because of the fact that we will talk about diagnosis later on. But I agree perfectly with you. When I was first tested, I did the full blood analysis, right? And then I was around 7 point something. And then I started modification. I went to one hospital where my friend works, and she used the glucometer. Is it glucometer? To test me, and I was around 5, which was very deceptive because I knew that within that period I did the blood test and the glucometer. I have not reduced the net sugar that significantly. So, like you said, maybe we are not talking about diagnosis, but it is also important to know that differences, significant differences can exist in your blood glucose level depending on which test you conduct, and maybe we would emphasize that in our subsequent discussion.
Okay, Anita, do you have anything to add?
I don't see her here. I don't see Anita here.
Oh.
Oh, she's here. Yeah, I see her. Okay, sorry, it was my panel. It was my.
Not for now. I think basically most things have been touched on.
Okay, thank you.
So, well, okay, then I'll ask something. How is the situation like in in Ghana, do you come by people who have this, and how do you deal with this in your advocacy and stuff?
Yeah, there are people who are diabetic and have all these conditions mentioned, but then it's just the management. So they are just being managed. That's all. I mean, nothing much. It's something so common. So it's not as scary as before.
Mhm.
But I think it's quite common. Yeah,
Okay.
it's quite
Okay,
common.
so I have, sorry.
It's just more of the. I think a lot of them also just believe in the herbal medicine. So some of them also have issues. But I think those that are able to go to clinic regularly, they are fine, except those who mix them up with other treatments. Yeah.
And in your advocacy, do you see people who probably may exhibit these risk factors and might quite be prone
People do
to
what?
this disease, who are not even aware that they can face that? I mean, the awareness. How is the awareness of this among the population you have encountered in your practice or in your experience?
As for awareness, people are aware. A lot of people are aware, but then they may not have the means to maybe have regular testing or checkup. That's just it. But as for the awareness, they are aware. They know what it is, and they know maybe what some of the symptoms are. They know, but being serious about maybe going to the clinic or going to the hospital or having the means is where the problem is. So that's just it. It's not that they don't know; they know, but the funding or the access, that's it. That's the issue.
I ask this because also when you look at the statistics I presented regarding low income countries, low middle income countries and that stuff, you see that the prevalence of the disease is quite high in the low income countries, right? And it goes back to highlight what you just said, the practicality. The people do not even have the means to seek the necessary intervention or to take the necessary step to mitigate the situation or to de-escalate the preliminary stage of the disease. So that probably supports the reason why we can see higher levels or higher rates of the disease in low income countries and low middle income countries. Thank you. I think
Yeah.
And also, I think for the low-income countries, there might be more than financial problems. I think it's about preferences. So now when we hear of cancer, we panic. But when we hear diabetes, it's very normal because the more media and people advocacy talks about it, we make it lighter because it's a progressive disease. You can have diabetes, like as Enoch gave himself as an example. He can be diagnosed now, but then he will see the effect after 20 years. So then you might think, oh, so I have diabetes and they said I should do this, but then nothing is happening to me. You look okay. So I think it's about preferences and how we see or our view about this kind of this modern diseases. And also here I had a colleague who is very active, a gym person, very healthy in quotes, and she's on Mediterranean diet and all that, you know. But at the end, she had diabetes, and you know the cause of hers, it was from fruit juice. She bought a lot of fruit juices, and which were all sugar free. But at the end of the day, there are other components. As you said, when we talk about diet and then diabetes, we can highlight those points. But there are other factors like fructose. There are lots of other chemicals in all these drinks, and it might be very minute. But when you start and you continue for a week, it build up glucose in your body. So it's not only about eating carbohydrates anymore. It's a very complicated disease, and its causes is also very complicated. So I think for Ghana, we take everything for granted, in my opinion, that we do not value these causes, and also people have lifestyle problem. So you don't really know if the problem is from high blood pressure or the high blood pressure is a result of diabetic complication. We are unable to see what is the main cause of the person's disease and help the person in that way. Anyways, I'm not expecting Ghana clinical stuff, but I think that's my observation. Yeah.
And I agree with you because, as I said in our previous discussion, when we talked about lifestyle diseases, obesity itself was a lifestyle disease, right? And
Yeah.
obesity cut across all the like. It's also a risk factor for almost all the lifestyle diseases, including cancer and the stuff, right? So, like you said, it's kind of quite related. The network of these diseases are quite complicated, and so um, I think people shouldn't take it for granted because you might be doing well in one aspect, like you said, with the person you know. She was probably doing very well in physical activity. She wasn't obese and stuff and all that. Maybe she has some genetic factor that she's not aware of, and just a little addition of fructose, which is something. If we want to talk, we can spend minutes and hours talking about because you may think that you are eating fruits and that's okay. You are not eating raw sugar, and even the time that you are eating the fructose, the time of the day that you are eating the fruit is very important. The fructose is a complex form of carbohydrates. Glucose is is the last stage, right? The simplified form, and the fructose is higher. It has to be broken down into simpler form before we get to. So if you eat this at night and then you sleep, you think that you are eating fruit and you are eating healthy. No, it's not true. It's not true. So it's important to even know what to take and when to take that thing.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
also just to
Yeah.
also highlight, because we are preparing our for our next session. So just to let them know what the next session can be, I just wanted to also talk one sentence about the fructose, which is under the treatment, because now we have a lot of sugar-free drinks. So when we go to the counter, when you go to a mall or you go to a shop, when you go to the shop, the supermarket, there are lots of we have gums, we have candies, we have cookies. Everything is advertising sugar free. Even some of the medicine we take, So these are just they are just bypassing for commercial purpose because not everyone is aware that glucose causes diabetes. But then there are other complex carbohydrates which can also equally lead to this. And as we are talking about fructose, diabetes is not only about your bloodstream. We talk about your liver and all other interconnected organs, the fat tissues. And this fructose, the whole body, our liver is able to break down this fructose in it needs about 0.00. I don't know the statistics, but it's very minute that we get it from all the fruits we eat. We get it from most of the natural food we eat. So in reality, we don't need additives. And the moment you have an addition from something else, like a supplement in a drink, in a cookie or something, it's very minute, but then it puts burden on your liver, it puts burden on your pancreas because the body is not built to break down this kind of complex carbohydrates. And now there are lots of interesting research and interesting people advocating in this direction. And they are revisiting all these dietary plans and all these exercise. People who exercise, they drink a lot of energy drinks and all that. And I think this is very interesting. And I'm also looking forward to when we talk about the treatment and the management.
Great. Yeah, I have two questions. One of them has to do with the pre-diabetes. So I'm not quite clear what is pre-diabetes. Is it like on your way to getting diabetes, and then you're like in the middle somewhere, or it's also something you inherit like genetically? What exactly is pre-diabetes? And then the next question is, so we are talking about fructose, right? And there is this diet that has been popularized recently called keto diet. Is it better in managing diabetes, or like keto diet is basically eating very little carbohydrates, including even if it's from fruits or anything, and eating lots of protein and fat? Is that a better way to handle diabetes, or you still think that is not that great?
I think that we will not talk about your keto diet now. Rhoda hinted, we will do that in the subsequent one. But I think somebody can answer the first question.
Well, I also, for me, I specialize in diabetes for more than 5 years. And for my research, I have looked at pre-diabetes, and I'm interested in pre-diabetes because it's when we need to catch the disease before you move to the clear disease, which is diabetes. And I think we can also have another session on pre-diabetes because now it's very broad and very complex. But what I can say is that before we can say you are pre-diabetic, we have to check, for example, your HbA1c. There are other tests, but there has
Please.
to be a test.
Please, the person who is going to listen to you probably doesn't have even bachelor's in biology. So that your HB, whatever it is, Can you say it in a layman's term so that our audience can make good use of it?
So then let's forget that. So then what we can say is that
So that's what that's what I said. That, for example, so there is a level of glucose that your body should have to say that you have normal glucose level, okay?
Yeah.
And there is a level of glucose beyond which you become diabetic. Between the normal glucose level and then the level of glucose where a person becomes diabetic, there is also a value. If we check you and your glucose value is not normal, but it's also not diabetic value, then you are pre-diabetic. So which means there is the possibility of that increasing to the level, the state of being diabetic. Okay, so I'm just going to give you just numbers for the sake of understanding. So if the normal glucose level in the blood should be, say, something like 5, right? And then for somebody to be diabetic, the person must have 7.5 value of glucose unit, whatever you want to use for. If somebody is between this 5 and then this 7.5, the person is pre-diabetic. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes
So
perfect sense.
then what that means is that early glucose intolerance. So the first time when we see that your body is not able to make use of glucose or is unable to produce more glucose, there your number does not show that you are diabetes. Then you are pre-diabetic.
Mhm.
So you have something going on in your liver, your body, your pancreas, but the value enough mentioned has not been detected. So one of the first thing we can say when you are pre-diabetic is that your body cannot make good use of the glucose, or it cannot produce enough glucose. And when you become diabetic, this is the progression. It's at the end stage when you have more glucose already in your body. And so we can also talk about insulin. It's the hormone which is helping the body move the glucose from your blood
The cells.
to the cells. So when you are pre-diabetic, what happens is that this insulin is either unable to see the glucose and tell them, oh, you have to go to these cells, or it's either that the body has told the insulin is producing more than it's expected to produce, or it's producing less than it's expected to produce. And there, that is where we can say you are pre-diabetic, aside the numbers. So that is why it's easy now for clinicians to detect that, oh, in the next future, you will have diabetes, because they see that either you have more insulin or less of it, or you have more glucose or less of it. That is how simple I can explain. Yeah.
Okay. If I may come in, our experts, I think you have given us enough of the insightful information that we need. And so that makes me feel that there's more to diabetes than 2 sessions of this presentation can contain, because if he's talking about just pre-diabetes, there's more than information that we need to know. But then let's come to us as the layman level, where there are some basic information that we may need some clarification on. I have 2 questions for you. The first one is, does stress actually contribute to the diabetic status of a person? Stress, because I have had some body parts information about it. If you can throw more light on it. Secondly, we know diabetes is glucose, or the end product of carbohydrate digestion not being able to go into the cells as a result of the factors you have elaborated on. Does it mean, to some laymen, does it mean if one ceases the intake of sweets, does it mean that we should cease, a diabetic patient should cease taking sweets? And how is the effect of that? These are layman questions that clarify certain issues.
Okay, so if I want to take on the first question, stress in general is a precursor for many diseases. When one is stressed, it affects the immune system of the person, and it goes a long way to affect every faculty, organ, and tissue. And stress is induced because of oxidation that is happening in the person's system. So even though I did not highlight stress as a possible cause of diabetes, because it underlines a lot of diseases. Stress underlines a lot of diseases, even infectious diseases. When one is stressed, like I said, and the immunity is compromised, it can cause that. So generally, stress is not something to tolerate. If you already are within the group where you are classified as a high risk person for diabetes, you don't want to add stress to your body, because it will in the end result in enhancing your chance of getting diabetes. That is what I can say for now, but we can also look into specific cases or research where stress has been found to really contribute significantly to diabetes in people or in patients. We can have a look at that, and probably in our next subsequent meeting we can present some scientific findings on it, if not now. And the sweet, maybe somebody wants to talk about the sweet.
Okay, I think I'm also interested in the stress. So I have a lot of research, not published, but then I have done a lot of research looking at stress and diabetes. So, for example, if we have, I know a lot of people might not be interested in animal research, so I don't know how to talk about this example. But there is research showing that even if we put some animals in cages, and then I am the person taking care of them, and I have another person, maybe Enoch, come to take care of these animals. And he induces stress by changing them from their cage to another cage every 30 minutes. This is enough for them to develop diabetes if we keep this happening for, let's say, a week. So this is one way to induce stress. And now stress is a modern disease. We are all exposed to stress in different ways. So then it means that stress is not even diabetes, it's one of the cause of most of cardiovascular diseases, cancers. It's everything, because it's when you are induced to stress, you produce certain hormones or certain chemicals which the body does not need, and all these bad things, it stays in your body, and then it has effect on all this insulin, the glucose, and all that we are talking about. So just to answer your question for a layman, when you are stressed, you are not only prone to diabetes, but you are also prone to heart diseases and all that disease, because stress can increase your blood pressure, for example. So this is also enough for us to understand that it can affect us. And when you talk about sweet, for all the things we've said so far, then I think sweet is also one cause of diabetes, but it's not something that when you take away, you can be diabetic free or you can be free from the disease, because we are talking about glucose, and glucose comes from all the starchy food we are eating. We are all Ghanaians, so we can talk about banku, rice, kenke. Most of the food we eat as Ghanaians are high in glucose. And we are not talking about the sweet yet. But then sweet comes in when I have taken care of myself and decided to reduce all these carbohydrates. But then in between my dieting or exercising, I am snacking anyhow. So what I mean by snacking is that maybe you just sit in your couch, you take one ice cream, you take one candy, and then it becomes a routine for you. That there are some people that each time they eat, they have to drink this way, for example, or each time you eat, you have to drink malt or Coke or eat something candy. These build up, and it can cause glucose accumulation through all the factors that Enoch has talked about. So I think sweets can cause diabetes, but if I get it from where you are talking from a Ghanaian point of view, where you say don't eat sweet because you get diabetes, then it's not only that which can also cause diabetes. It's a lot of factors.
But when it comes to raw sugar, raw white sugar, right? That's a big thing, and research has shown. And the raw sugar we're talking about can be found in these sweets and can be found in processed food and stuff. So like let's say you buy chocolates, you buy cakes and stuff, they all add the sugar and stuff. But what I want to mention here is that there was a study where people were obese, right? They selected only people who were obese and stuff and determined their glucose level and stuff. Some were eating junks and all that. They didn't change the quantity of food they ate. They only changed their source of sweet. If I'm right to use that terminology, sweet or sugar. So they feed them fruits with fibers which have high sugar and all those stuff. And they realized that within a space of weeks, their weight was the same. The intention was not to reduce their weight whatsoever, but just to see how low carb food or food which are not containing processed sugar could influence the glucose level of these people. And it came out that these people who were put on such diet improved in their blood glucose significantly. So I might eat some fruits which are very sweet, normal fruits which are very sweet, but because the fruit contains some kind of fiber and these work together hand in hand, you cannot compare the same to eating only sugar, which does not contain any fiber. So there can be significant effect of sugar or sweetened substances on the development of diabetes by a person. So we should take note of that. I think I am so.
Okay, so one final question. Which, so should we be particular about the kinds of fruits we eat? For example, some fruits are very high in sugar, others are not quite as high. So should we like be a little bit particular in the kind of fruits that we eat, the low sugary fruits?
I think that this presentation or this section had dived into part of what we intend to do subsequently. You are all interested in the prevention and the management, and so you forget that we will have a session for that. So can we reserve? Can we reserve that for next session? For that. Yeah. Okay.
But I think with the food, I think you just have to the type of fruit anyway. It's just about managing the portion. So it's not really like one particular food to give you maybe diabetes, but how you eat it and
How
when
much?
matters.
I agree with her, and that's why I also mentioned it's not only about even the quality but the quantity. Overeating is a real thing. So even if you want to eat banana has potassium and stuff, and people will promote that. But if you eat certain fingers of banana in a day and you make it a daily habit, you should also know that it's going to generate a lot of fructose and sucrose or whatsoever it is in the end. It's going to also elevate your glucose level, your overall glucose level. So moderation is quite important. And again, I think we can dive deep into that in subsequent discussion.
All right, thank you very much for this presentation. That's the beauty of having discussions with experts, because it makes you know the nuances surrounding many of these issues which we the normal people will not be thinking about on a normal basis. So thank you very much, Rhoda, Enoch, and Anita, and thank you to my co-host for helping me with the hosting of these wonderful people. So as you can see, that there are many things that we can discuss with diabetes. So we'll be doing some of these things in a subsequent meeting. So just watch out for more content on diabetes coming up. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming, and hopefully we'll see you again in the subsequent videos.
Thank you so much for having us, and it's our pleasure to do more.